Oh, did you not hear? I heard AI can actually alter past podcast episodes on Weekly Fix. So guys, don't not reliable, not reliable. Just stay here. Continue to listen to this week's episode. Yeah, I'll save you the trouble. It's AI. It's all AI.
Welcome to the Weekly Fix podcast, where we're just two friends talking about our passions within movies, TV shows, gaming, and comics. Thanks for checking out the podcast. We hope you like it. Hello, welcome back. We are so glad that you're joining us for another episode of Weekly Fix. I'm your co-host Zane. Joined with me, as always, is my great friend Jacob. Jacob, we actually got to spend quite a bit of time this weekend together, and I want to get to that in just a second. But just to give you a little rundown of what lies before you in this episode, we're going to be talking about some Spider-Man 4 announcements. What's coming up this month? We got next month. We got a trailer that was dropped for Venom 3. Agatha All Along releases this week. A little bit of box office, a surprise. We got a little bit of discussion about some animated films. And then we're going to be breaking down Rings of Power Season 2, Episode 5, which I'm very excited to be talking about. But first, before any of that gets started, Jacob, I want to know, how was your weekend?
It was great, man. I got to do a lot of fun stuff. I went to the comic shop and was able to pick up a few comics. Haven't gotten around to reading them yet, but I got some Ninja Turtle comics. I was able to find like a reprint of the first Invincible comic, which is always cool to find stuff like that. I was able to pick up the new Acolyte comic, which I'm excited to read. It's a little bit more about Kelnaka, which was one of my favorite parts of the show, which is the Jedi Wookiee, which is super fun. But yeah, pretty good weekend overall. We got to play some basketball last night, which is always good. Definitely feeling it a little bit today, but overall it's been great.
Feeling a little bit sore?
Oh, dude. I haven't, like I said last night, I hadn't ran in probably like 5 or 6 months probably. So it's definitely catching up with me a little bit this morning and throughout the day.
Yeah, I was feeling quite a bit sore as well. When you don't have too many subs, 2 hours of basketball can wear on you when you're not doing it all the time.
Yeah, for sure. But it was a blast. I had a really good time. It was always fun getting out there and playing. Like I said, it'd been a while since I got to, so I look forward to the next one.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll be doing it consistently because, it's basketball. We love basketball. So, but, my weekend was pretty amazing as well. We got to stay up incredibly late on Saturday night watching the UFC fight.
Oh, yeah. I already forgot about that.
Was a blast. Title card matches were not the best that I've seen, but still enjoyable getting to hang around with the friends. Sean, Zach, you, Kyle, and John. That was a blast. Just staying up way too late though. I'm not built for that. Especially watching something. Playing a game until 2 a.m. I'm okay. I'm no problem. But when I'm just watching something till 2 a.m., it's a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah, it was good. It was fun though. It's always fun like doing stuff like that because it's also one of those things you don't really get to do a whole lot, So it's always fun when you get that opportunity. Like you said, title fights weren't the best, but it was still fun to see. I've not watched a ton of UFC in my life, so it's always fun every time I do get the opportunity to watch like a live fight. Usually I'm just the one catching the clips on Twitter or X or YouTube or something afterwards. So it was cool to get to watch it live.
Yeah, I think that's actually my first like pay-per-view fight UFC that I've seen. I'm like you. I don't really care for it too much. People beating each other senseless is not my favorite thing to watch unless it's fake in a movie. I'm all about it then. Punisher can break people's legs and blast people's heads off, and I'm perfectly fine with it. But when it's real, it's a little different for me. I don't know.
Well, I mean, try not to skip ahead a little bit, but we did get a pretty gnarly arm break in Rings of Power this past week. So, it's fun to see it in the movies. Cool. It is really fun to see it in movies, but I'm kind of the same way. It's fun to watch. I really enjoy it. I think I enjoy more so just the hanging out with friends than the actual fights.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the people, there's no chance that I was going to be dropping any money on that fight, let alone, I mean, I wouldn't have stayed up to watch it, let alone drop any money on it. So, yeah, I agree. But the company is amazing. But hopping right into it, I'm going to go ahead and start off with this Spider-Man 4 news. So we got the official director announcement for Spider-Man 4, and we are getting Destin Daniel Cretton. How do you know much about him, and are you happy with this pick?
To be honest with you, I feel like this stuff has been getting talked about so much, and I know it's like this is probably a little bit more set in stone, but I feel like it's also so far away still that I'm not even convinced this is going to stick. So, I think it's a good pick. I don't think it's terrible, but I also think at the end of the day it's Spider-Man, and I don't really think that it's. I don't know. These things just don't get me too excited. Even when you finding out the Russo brothers was back was great, right? It's super fun and exciting to hear that type of stuff. But still, at the end of the day, it's not something like that really gets me like super excited for a project. I know you get a little bit more excited for stuff when you hear the directors and all that type of stuff. But for me, it's never been something that's got me like too pumped for anything.
Yeah, I personally, this gets me incredibly excited because I think he is a phenomenal director. What he did with Shang-Chi and everything that he handled, Shang-Chi is one of the best movies we've gotten since Endgame, especially for a standalone introduction film. I think it rivals any single hero film we have in the MCU. And the third act for me is a little iffy and touch and go, and that's its weak point, and I'll give it that. But everything else was fantastic. But I mean, he has a tremendous track record outside of the MCU, and before he started doing Shang-Chi, he doesn't have a single directorial debut since 2013 that's below a 7, and that's only a 6.6. Like, that's his lowest director rating on IMDb. He directed The Glass Castle with Brie Larson, Just Mercy with Michael B. Jordan, and then he had another short term 12, which is his highest rated film with Brie Larson. It's a dramatic telling of a coming of age story, I believe, or a relationship drama. And so I think he handles drama movies very well. And The Glass Castle, Brie Larson and Woody Harrelson is in it, and it's a battle of it's like a mental health struggle between a abusive alcoholic father and an artistic mother who is allowed to captivate and kind of get her children away from what they're experiencing from their father through storytelling. And it's really like just the fact that he can tell stories like that and put it on and get these fan loved movies, not only critic loved, but the fan and the audiences have really enjoyed these films. They've always performed well in the ratings. I'm very excited for this pick. I think it's a great pick, and to know that from Shang-Chi, some of the best action and martial arts we've seen in the MCU, to add that to a street level Spider-Man who is down on his luck, I think that's great. And this really excites me for Spider-Man 4, and it's Spider-Man 4, so I was already excited for it, but I think this pick gives it more life.
So you think this is going to be a street level type story?
I do. I think Spider-Man 4 will be street level in the terms of potentially Battle World being formed. So I think what we're going to see Spider-Man doing in Spider-Man 4 is kind of what we saw Daredevil doing in the final episode of X-Men 97. You know how he was on the streets while everything was going apart and trying to keep things together? I think that may be kind of what Spider-Man's doing in this, but just on a significantly larger scale. I think we're going to start with completely down to earth story of his life, and then I think by Act 3 will be him street level trying to figure out how to save his little section of New York during Doctor Doom Battle World kind of taken in.
I think that could be a lot of fun.
And that's just me projecting. We have no clue even when this release date is. We're assuming that this is the movie between Doomsday and Secret Wars, but we actually don't know. So
no, I think that'd be fun too. And like you said, all those things you mentioned, I think sound great. I don't usually, like I said, keep up with the directors as much as you do. So just having that insight and stuff, I think it could be really good. One thing that does excite me though is, like you mentioned, the action scenes. I think could be really fun. Because Spider-Man's obviously got a very unique skill set when it comes to those types of fights. So I really think he could really do something fun there. But overall, like I said, I don't get too excited for these things because, again, I feel like this could even change before we even get to actual filming because I feel like we hear so many things so much, especially in the Marvel space. I kind of hold my breath until we actually get to that filming stage. But so far, so good. I can't complain with that. Like I said, not too big of a deal to me, but I also don't hate it. So it should be fun.
Yeah, and I get that. When people who are in the MCU kind of framework already get announced as directors, generally that sticks. He's already been in it before. he knows the process and he knows what it takes to get it done, and they have confidence in him. It's not like they're bringing an outsider in. So
Mhm.
if this was a outside director coming in, I might be a little bit more reserved, but because he's already been in the MCU framework, I think I think it holds more weight. And I mean, it is an official announcement, so I do take those with more grains of salt than a rumored announcement as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely having him already be in the MCU space is the big thing. So like you said, he's familiar with it all. This is probably the most reliable. Like you said, it is an official, announcement. But again, everything's so subject to change. But I also do feel like this is probably the most set in stone you can probably get. So yeah.
Yeah, but something that is for sure set in stone, and that is that Agatha All Along, when this is released, will be coming out tomorrow. So Wednesday, the 18th, Wednesday the 18th, we will be seeing Agatha All Along with a 2 episode premiere. Now, Jacob, we've talked about this a little bit, but I've had a little tiny bit of a shift, and I wanted to see if this is actually something that's fallen even more off your radar, or if you are any more excited for this than you were maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago.
No, I'm be honest, I'm still not excited for it. And if it wasn't for us doing the podcast, this is probably a show that I wouldn't even watch opening day. It's probably something might even wait till it's out to even watch, and I wouldn't even guarantee that I would watch the entirety of it, to be honest with you. So, this is still just not very exciting to me. I'm hoping that I get I'm completely wrong. I hope that it's amazing. I hope it's a really good time. I hope it actually tells something important to the MCU and actually gives us something to look forward to, or it's a really good self-contained story. I hope they don't do that kind of in-between stuff where we see some random cameos and things like that, but it ends up not mattering at all. But again, I'm not excited for this one. Nothing's really changed for me. I just not my thing still. But again, I'm hoping wrong. I'm open to being proved wrong. Like I said, I'm going to try to be more positive about all the stuff that we're getting to see. So I'm excited that we're getting some Marvel at least. That's got me excited, but just nothing's really stuck out to me recently that's got me like, okay, I'm super pumped to watch this.
So nothing. I'm semi with you there. So I don't think I'm quite as cynical as you. I was clearly going to watch this. Now, I mean, you haven't even seen all of the MCU projects in and of
Yeah.
itself, so that take right there doesn't really surprise me much. But what has excited me over the past few weeks is that we are getting actual sets. And so that was one of the things that I saw, is that almost every single frame of this film or this TV miniseries was actually filmed on a real life set. Physical effects were being used. They actually lit people on fire in the fire scenes. And so that kind of gives me hope for just like the passion of the storytelling, and then also not just phoning it in. Like they actually took the time and effort to build sets for it. I kind of think that means they believe in this project and that they really want to look good. They kind of are, I mean, kicking back at the, CGI everything. And so that excites me. But and then the other thing that excites me is that Aubrey Plaza, who has been cast as Rio Vidal, said the people have seen it, says that she is potentially one of the greatest villains of the MCU. And that is like shocking to me. I don't know if I believe it, but I can see it from her demeanor and how villainous she loves to be in her acting. And so those two things have really spiked my interest in this series more than they had been by any stretch of the imagination before.
Well, I think that definitely some of the things you touched on, using the sets and stuff, I love that they're at least giving this show, a proper, I guess, proper attention to detail. I guess is the best way I could say it. Like, they're actually giving it a chance. They aren't going the full CGI route. I think that's just something we're going to start to see more so from Marvel. I think they've gotten a lot of backlash, and they really seem to have put forth the effort of wanting to change some things and kind of wanting to get back what everyone loved. I think that's definitely a good step for them, is doing that. Saying that stuff about like one of the best villains, I could see it just because she is such a good actor. And that's fun to hear and stuff. But it's just so hard to take some of those early things. I mean, how many good things did we hear about the Acolyte before it came out? How many good things did we hear about? So many things. I feel like every time, we get these Marvel and Star Wars shows, people are talking about how amazing it is, and then it comes out and we're just kind of let down a little bit. So stuff like that I really am reserved for, but I think she's kind of got like, I'm not saying she's on this level, and some people might think she is, but she kind of has the Giancarlo Esposito effect. You know, you're kind of excited just to see what they do with the character because they are such dynamic actors and all those things. So I would say that's kind of where I'm at in that excitement level. Is again not comparing the two, but they kind of do bring a certain, you know, style of acting to everything they're a part of, which is always really fun to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and I think specifically for her that this role kind of fits her personality almost to a T. And so like, you know, I don't just get excited for her in any role, but I think this role fits her very well. And so I would agree with you. Like it has that like, oh, okay, like, you know, Giancarlo Esposito is really good at villain. So when you see him in a villain role, you're very excited.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, I do get exactly what you're saying there. And what I do take those for those accounts of like, oh, this show is going to be great, or you know, she's going to be a top 10 villain with a grain of salt. But I also like vet my source a little bit, and so it was Daniel Rickman who did it, and I really like his scoops. I feel like he's very accurate with what he says generally, and you know, he's had misses for sure, but he's generally pretty cautious with his statements like that because he is known as a top level scoopster. So I do think that that holds a little bit more water than, you know, some other people would. But I'm, you know, still yet. I'm not super excited for this one, but I'm definitely going to be tuning in this week, and I'm excited to talk about it next week.
Yeah, I think it's fun that we're getting some good news from it. You know, anything like hearing that is much better than hearing like, oh, this show doesn't look ready. There's a lot of things that are really bad looking in it. So overall, it sounds like they've got a lot of things in place for it to maybe shock some people, and I'm hoping I'm one of those people it shocks. Because it's fun, it's Marvel, and I think the cast is pretty good overall. You know, talking about all the actors in it, I think they have a pretty good cast listing. So it's going to be fun to see how it plays out. But I'm gonna stay reserved. Still excited. But nothing's got me like really amped for this one yet.
Yeah, I will clarify. I am still also cautiously optimistic going into this one. I'm not. I didn't like flip flop like I did on Echo. You know, I didn't. It hasn't bought me all the way. You know, but I am a little bit more excited than I was, and I thought it was worth mentioning with the debut this week that we.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Maybe
absolutely.
a little bit of switch of thoughts, but something else that is exciting. We got our final Venom 3 trailer. Now, the last time we talked, you had not seen it, which was surprising to me. Have you been able to watch the new trailer yet?
Yeah, I watched it, and I think it's more so kind of what we got in the other trailers. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think some of the things we also saw are really exciting. I guess we haven't been on the podcast since we found out about Null, which is really fun. That's always going to be an exciting storyline. You know, I was a little bit more reserved of the fact that I really wish this is going to be something that the MCU is going to have access to. But I think some early reports have kind of said this is going to blend into the MCU in some form or fashion. So that's kind of made me a little bit more excited. But overall, I think it just kind of looks like more of the same. So I'm not, again, I haven't seen the other Venom movies, so there's only so excited I can get for this one.
Oh,
but I think it looked good.
I keep forgetting that, dude. I keep forgetting you have not seen the other two Venom movies.
Yeah, so I can only get so excited for a movie
dude,
I've never seen before.
Yeah, how amped are you for this the final final legacy of this you know, trilogy you haven't seen?
It's like asking someone how excited or how much they love Star Wars Episode 3 and they haven't seen the first, 1, 2. So
yeah,
that's kind of the same with this one. But again, I think it looks fun. You know, maybe it'll be something I get to before it comes out and we can go watch it in the theaters or something. But man, I can only get so excited.
I think you definitely need to watch it beforehand. I think the first two will shock you.
Spider-Man's my favorite. Spider-Man's my favorite superhero, so I think stuff having kind of that same world, Venom being one of the biggest villains for Spider-Man, I think just that natural aspect of it is enticing to me. And I really don't know why I never watched the first two. It's just not something I ever really sat down to do. And I'm always very reserved with the Sonyverse stuff, so...
Yeah. Now, something interesting in this, Rhys Ifans, so he plays Dr. Connor in The Amazing Spider-Man. He's in this casting, but he's unlisted for what he's playing. Some people have thought that he's playing Null. Do you think there's a possibility that we maybe get a Lizard cameo?
I would think that would be really fun. I think it'd be even more fun if they pull Andrew Garfield into this. I think that would be what gets me super amped for this, right? Andrew Garfield's my favorite Spider-Man, so that would get me absolutely stoked for this. But I don't know if that would be something they would announce before the movie. And I feel like if it was something that was going to be in there, I feel like they would have already shown it to us to try to get people more excited to see kind of what role these cameos are going to play. So maybe there's a Lizard cameo, but I definitely wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah,
Personally.
I'm not gonna bet on it either. Because I may have missed it big time, but I don't know if I recognized his character in the trailers. But yeah, I also wouldn't bet on it, but I thought it was fun to throw out there that the both Sonyverse esque or adjacent, because Ultimate Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man isn't in the villain verse, but it is Sony's property. They did release it, so I thought it was interesting. Yeah, but this third trailer to me looked spectacular. I thought it looked incredibly fun. The fact that they're bringing Noel into it, and so Donny Cates, he's the creator of School from the comic, or of Noel from the comics. And for those of you who don't know, Noel is the king of the symbiotes, the one who created these symbiotes, the sword that Gore the God Butcher uses in Thor. That was actually Noel's sword, and so he created the symbiotes. He's the one that created Venom and Carnage and all of those, and so he's the king of the symbiotes. And so the fact that we're getting Noel in this is really quite exciting to me, and the fact that the creator of Noel said that he's read the script and he said that, and this is his quote: "That's how you treat a king." End quote. And so I think the fact that he is pumped about this and is excited how they're using potentially his greatest creation in film gives me more and more confidence. Now, again, this is kind of the same thing. We could be getting, fluffed and getting excited for this film when it's really not anything to get excited about. Who knows?
Who knows how big that paycheck that hit his account was to say that? But it's one of those
exactly.
things.
So I want to, I do want to give those disclaimers, but
for sure.
You can only do that one time. There's never a second chance. And so most comic fans are passionate, and especially creators are incredibly passionate about what they've created, and they're very proud of it. And so if they really took something that he created and poured his life into, and really like that was his baby, and they really kind of messed it up, I don't think any amount of paycheck could move an artist to say that in a snuff piece, like in like just a little like article that wasn't like mainstream. Sure. Like it's not like this was like he was on, in the trailer promoting it like that. This was like a Screen Rant interview on the side. So I do think that maybe this wasn't a payoff, and he's actually very excited to see his character come into the big screen. So that excites me, but
I don't think it's bad at all for him to be saying something like that. It is just one of those things you got to be really careful about what you agree with, and don't get too excited about certain things, because you never really know. And it's one of those things. I feel the same way. I feel like if you've created something and you're really passionate about it, you're not going to want to lie about it. But it is easy. I feel like you could get just excited, like, oh, my character's on the big screen finally. It's just so exciting. So I hope that he's just being straight up and he's just like, it actually is really good. And I agree. I hope it's not just a publicity type thing.
Yeah, like Tom Cruise saying The Flash was the best movie.
Superhero movie ever. He wasn't it either. I feel like that was said by a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, but Tom Cruise was the main one. He was like, get back to the movies. This is what the people have been waiting for. And he's like, dude, I hate this movie. It's awful. But I want people to pay money for my movie.
Oh, man. Mission Impossible movies are apparently the greatest. And I love Mission Impossible movies. Let me just preface that. But they're supposedly the greatest action movies of all time, every time. So,
Top Gun Maverick, dude.
Yeah. We're talking about one of the greatest actors of all time, so he's gonna have some good movies out there. But it is funny to hear like how they say stuff and what they like to put, what narratives they like to push.
Do you think Tom Cruise's range is good enough to put him in top actors of all time?
I don't even know that necessarily. I don't think you're probably gonna hate this. I don't think you need to have incredible range to be considered a top actor of all time. You hear a lot of people use the term like I just forgot the trades, or jack of all trades, master. What is it? Master of none or something like that.
Yeah, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you can just master something, and I think he's done a really good job mastering what he wants to do in movies. And a lot of his movies, yeah, you can tell it's Tom Cruise, but it's really enjoyable to watch. I don't think you have to have the range, to be put in that echelon. That's me personally. I think if you can really master one thing and really become known for that one thing, I think you can be in the argument. Now, I don't necessarily say I'd say he is the greatest of all time, but I think there's a place for him to be made just for what he's done.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. I was just curious. You mentioned
Yeah,
it,
for
so I
sure.
thought, I don't know. Just thought it. Something that was incredibly surprising to me, kind of moving on. Do you have anything else to say about Venom? Probably not, since you haven't seen him, right?
No, I think that's about it. I probably don't even
Okay.
really know much of what's happening, so
Yeah, I
it
didn't
looks
want to.
cool.
I didn't want to
It looks
move
cool.
on, without giving you a shot.
Yeah,
Another
it looks
chance.
cool.
But something that was, both for us was a meh. Weren't really excited about it, but has really turned all the heads and apparently all the paychecks into box office is Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice opened with a $111 million opening weekend, and a total run currently of $264 million with 2 weekends in the box office, which is wow. Like that is really, really good.
Mhm.
I
Well,
mean, this was super surprising to me. What about you?
let's preface this with like I don't think either of us. I don't remember. Maybe we did. I don't remember us saying we didn't think it was going to do well because I think we both know how big the fan base is for Beetlejuice. I think it's one of the most beloved franchises really out there. So I'm not necessarily surprised it's doing big numbers. I know a lot of people that were excited to go watch it. A lot of people in some of the collecting group chats that I'm in and stuff like that were all going to see it. So I'm definitely not surprised it's doing it, but it's still a big for me. I'm still not going to watch this movie. I don't care if it breaks 1 billion by the end of this week. I'm not going to see it. So I'm not definitely not surprised by it, but it is having a great run. Which every time a movie has a good run in the theaters, I'm excited for it.
Yeah. I'm personally not super excited for this one to be doing well. Because I don't love the genre. I don't love the thought. I don't love like kind of what it talks about. And it was a huge surprise for me. I think I mentioned I was like, I don't really know where the fan base is for this and like why people are excited for it. I knew they were excited, but
Mhm.
I kind of expected it to not do as well as it is. So it is kind of a surprise for me. But regardless, hey, awesome that it is. Definitely something I read this week, which was pretty cool of it, was this was going to be a direct to streaming movie, and the studio said, "Hey, if you cannot get this budget under $100 million, then we are going to just release this to streaming." And which I think is a crazy like call to make, like spend less
Well,
money and we'll try to get ticket sales. But yeah, so they dropped it by like $52 million in budget to get it under 100 mil, just so
I
they could
mean,
have a theatrical release.
think about those margins now. They're probably pumped that they dropped it $52 million. They're like, oh, we're making even more money now. Um, so
Yeah, I
I think
mean
they probably.
2 weeks
I
in
think that,
the theaters, and they're already probably $64 million in the green
yeah.
after advertising.
Yeah, so I think they're probably pretty pumped. I definitely don't think they're complaining right now.
Oh
They'll
no,
probably
not at
tell every
all.
movie. They'll probably tell every movie from now on, "Hey, gotta drop it 50 million if you want a theatrical release," and then just hope that it pays off like this one did.
Well, I mean, we've talked about it before. Like um, this is not something that we think should just be common as overinflated budgets. Like,
Oh, for sure.
I mean, we think of the first Deadpool. The first Deadpool had a budget of like 20 to $50 million, and it made like $700 million the box office. Like, that is kind of the numbers that you should go for. You should not go for like 3 billion. Or I mean, no one's crossed 3 billion yet, but like you shouldn't be trying to make $1 billion but spend like 450 million. Your risk is so high. Like, I don't understand why studios are doing that. And it's not a sure thing. We've seen movies fail time and time again. So I do like the fact that they cut the budget, because I think overinflated movies is ruining cinema, especially for those offshoot one shot movies that I love so much that kind of don't get made as much anymore, like the buddy cop comedies that like I
Hmm.
love so much. You're not really seeing those come out as often, especially not for the theater. So I really do kind of hope that they rein these back in, and so that we're not just getting blockbusters.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny though that we live in this society where they're like, just throw more money at it. You would think everyone would be like, hey, let's try to cut costs, let's try to save as much money as we can, and spend it elsewhere. Especially like you mentioned, Deadpool, how small of a budget it had, and how big of a movie it became. I think it's just one of those things you would think we'd start to see more of that, but it doesn't really seem like that's happened. And maybe this movie will help a little bit with that. Cutting costs and still making a really good movie is definitely still possible.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. But going on, something you sent me. This is a little bit off topic for us generally, but we got a report back, and it was kind of somebody was got an insider report at Pixar, and so Pixar is blaming Lightyear. Have you seen Lightyear?
No, I have not.
So I haven't either. And Pixar is blaming the failure of that movie on the same-sex kiss that they put into it. And because of that, they were giving notes to the animators of Inside Out 2 to keep making Riley look, and I quote, less gay. You sent this to me, and I thought this was kind of worth talking about on the podcast. And I find it funny that the timing of this, considering our small group yesterday. But this is just super interesting to me. And I kind of wanted to touch on, first off, two things. First off, interjecting your wants and acceptance into a mainstream audience is definitely going to hurt the attendance of conservatives and Christians who do not want those values forced on their kids. I mean, I don't think the failure of Lightyear stands in that one single moment by any stretch of the imagination, but it definitely didn't help it. But what I wanted to touch on is that they're taking the same-sex kiss and blaming it on that, and completely ignoring the fact that they made a bland, lifeless movie, and that everyone I saw reviewed it said, how in the world did Andy go home and want a Buzz Lightyear? Because this was the most boring film I've ever seen in an animated theater. Like, why would you not just make it a fun Buzz Lightyear film? And instead they made a film that kids are falling asleep to instead of excited and cheering. And so I love the fact that you had people giving like good critiques for this, and the studio's just like, you know what? Those bigots, they just don't want men kissing on screen. It's crazy, or females. I actually don't know what it was. I think it might have been a female kiss, but I just thought that was super interesting. When you sent it to me, I was like, wow, that is super interesting that just came out. But what is your opinion on this? Do you kind of echo the same thoughts, or do you have anything else?
I just think this is more of studios simply refusing to listen to actual constructive criticism. And I think we see it all the time in so many films. People complain about what's wrong with Marvel. People will complain about what's wrong with Star Wars. And it always comes to the fact that, it's not ever going to be what the fans are saying it is. They're always going to try to come up with another reason as to why something didn't succeed. And I don't really understand that process. I don't really understand that thought process, because you're never going to get better if you don't listen to the people that are paying you to make stuff, right? So I think this is just more of that. I think a lot of the things you said, I agree with. But yeah, I just think that's really, it blows my mind when we see reports and stuff like this. And you mentioned, I haven't seen this movie, so I don't even know, what the reference is to. I don't know anything about it. But I did think it was interesting because you even just touched on it. There were people that gave actual constructive criticism for this movie. And it just seems like they are just simply ignoring it. And I think it's just wild that we still live in a society where, this industry still works the way that it does, that they just refuse to listen to what fans are actually wanting and what fans actually think.
Yeah. And I think that's perfect. I think it's a two front, right? You can be like, yeah, that definitely hurt it, but just if you would have made good content regardless, like people would have showed up for it. Like, It's not like Deadpool and Wolverine was the wholesome content. And, fans were flocking to it because it's such this great, amazing,
it's so
wholesome
heartwarming
content for children. No, like it's complete. It goes against a lot of stances, but the fact is they made an enjoyable movie to watch. I personally don't even think it was a good movie. Like, the storyline was lacking, but it was enjoyable, so people wanted to watch it.
Exactly.
So to take that take on that, I thought was very Hollywood-esque. I would say.
100%. 100%. And I don't know if there's really even much more to say than what you just said. It's
Yeah.
just such a Hollywood statement to make. So
Yeah. And then the last thing before we get to our review is Wild Robot. One of the things we touched on in our September rundown, debuted with 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is not entirely surprising to me from the first things that we saw for it. I thought it looked beautiful. I thought the animation style was interesting and intriguing, and I thought it looked kind of, I guess I wanted to say like TMNT clean kind of
okay.
animation style. So you know how TMT kind of was like really with that what was it? What's the end of that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
What,
Mutant
Mutant Mayhem?
Mayhem. Yeah, Mutant Mayhem. It's kind of gritty and it kind of had like a very unfinished film to this. This kind of has that pencil look, but like finished.
Yeah.
And so I think they both have their places, and I think Mutant Mayhem was really good for its genre and what it was telling. It was telling a dark, grittier comic booky story. So I think that was really fun and good animation. But I do think this one just looked really good. And then it has a fun premise, robot, finding taking care of a wild animal and kind of seeing what it looks like. We've seen the cold hard machines have emotions story point, and it always seems to do well. Wally, the Mitchells versus the Machines kind of has similar points in it, and I think this is going to be one that surprises people and they enjoy clearly with 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, I will say Rotten Tomatoes for me is the worst of the ratings. I never look to Rotten Tomatoes for whether I should watch a film or not, and I only talk about it because everyone else does, I guess. I always look at IMDb because I think it's a more trustworthy source, and there's more variance within it, so you get an actual kind of viewpoint of what the general audience is saying, and then also with the Metascore, you can kind of see exactly what the critics are saying, because Rotten Tomatoes is pass fail. So I don't look to that, but I thought that was interesting that everyone's saying go watch this film. So
Well, this is one of those ones. It's one of those sneaky movies. We come across these every once in a while where, there's some hype for it. People are talking about it. You see the trailers and all that fun stuff, but it doesn't ever really grab you. And then it comes out and everyone's like, oh my gosh, you got to see this Pixar or this animated movie. So this is one of those movies I'm not really, I didn't expect it to be as highly regarded as it's being. Honestly, I didn't see it just from the trailers I'd seen. It looked like kind of your basic story a little bit. But I think that's just what a lot of people like a lot of the time. So I think it's going to be really fun. I think people are going to enjoy it. And I think this might be one of those sneaky movies of the year that, we get to the end of the year and people are like, you know what? That might have been one of my favorite movies I saw this year. And I think that's like a perfect place for it to be.
yeah, I think this may have a potential to be. We got Moana 2 kind of come out and competing with it later this
Yeah.
year, and so they're going to be comparing all of these to that. I think this has more of like a Gentle Giant. What is that? The Iron Giant.
Yep. Yep.
Kind of feel to it, and it looks like an updated version of that almost, but with animals instead of humans, and maybe a little bit more child friendly, as I realized showing my daughter the Iron Robot. I should have held off on that and didn't. We didn't make it through, which I my wife so caringly and lovingly told me, "Hey, what are we doing here?" So I was like, I don't know. So we turned that one off. But
We'll wait for this one.
yeah. So
This could be her robot exposure.
Yeah, well, she watched Mitchell's versus the Machines and she loves it. So I think that's a very fun. I know I've talked about it on the podcast before, but that's one of my surprise animated films that I really enjoyed and thought was a blast. It has the zaniness to it and the animation input and all the silly graphic kind of add-ins to tell the story. I love, because she is a digital movie maker, and so she always like is inputting what she would have done kind of in editing video into the actual movie. But anyway, that's wrong. But the Wild Robot, it releases on September 27th, so this may be one. This one maybe you want to go check out. It's getting good reviews.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, to the main event. Episode 5 of Rings of Power. Jacob, you gave me a little sneak peek of what.
Yeah.
Now hold on a second. Back it up. I'm sorry. Last week we did have some unfinished business. You said you made a statement that you never broke a promise on the podcast. And I want to play this clip for you just real quick and just see what you think. What's your rebuttal to this clip?
Everyone's been talking about what if I haven't kept my promise to you guys on the podcast.
Oh
to
man,
this
promise
day.
breaker.
Listen, man, we've seen a lot of what AI is capable of in today's society. Our voices are all over the internet. I mean, how many podcast episodes have we done now? So I don't think that's me. I don't know who said that. I don't know why they would even come up with something like that. So AI, man, it's crazy. Y'all beware of AI out there. It's a scary thing.
Hey guys, AI is prevalent, but you can go back and check on episode 12. I did.
Oh, did you not hear? I heard AI can actually alter past podcast episodes on Weekly Fix. So guys, not reliable. Just stay here. Continue to listen to this week's episode. I'll save you the trouble. It's AI. It's all AI.
I did want to bring those receipts. I did say I would go back and check, and just wanted to, maybe bring that up. But anyway, no promises needed to be made this week because we're fully in swing. But episode 5, you said right before we got on the podcast, man, what a boring episode.
Man,
so
boring.
I want to kind of like break that down. What was so boring about it for you?
I just feel like we left on such a high. I think it was finally starting to pick up. Things were getting exciting, and I feel like this was such a setup episode when we didn't really need a setup episode. And I feel like they could have kept so much momentum going. But I think maybe the reason, this is where we disagree a lot when it comes to shows and things that we enjoy. You love to see that stuff happening. You love to see the setup. You don't like, just, kind of thinking of what happened. You don't like as much connecting the pieces. I would say maybe is like being like, oh, that makes sense that they did that because of the direction of the last episode. I don't necessarily need to see all this, back dialogue that we're doing here. And that's what this felt like to me. It felt like a lot of unnecessary scenes that we didn't necessarily need, and we could have gotten to that same conclusion or understood the ideas of a lot of these characters without this episode. Now, that being said, I do think there were some good parts of this episode. The Numenor storyline continues to get even better, in my opinion. That's highly elevating its way up my list of favorite things I look forward to. That one's got a really fun thing going on right now, and I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that. So it wasn't all bad, but this one, it just felt a little boring. And again, this was been my biggest complaint with the show. These episodes are too long. There's so much I feel like could be cut from this show, and I would not be missing anything. And I know I might be the only one that holds that sentiment. I know you really enjoy the longer episodes, but for me, I just feel like they're just having them there for the sake of having it. Again, I feel like there's a lot of scenes we don't necessarily need, but we're getting anyway.
Yeah, so I want to just say that you were right. From last week, you said there's no chance that we actually pick up Galadriel's story because they end on a cliffhanger and then they don't tell the story. So I thought that was funny that you said that, and it did come true exactly as you said. But I don't necessarily agree that this is a setup episode. I think everything, especially with the dwarves, needed to be told, and I think that was the high point of this entire episode. I do think the Numenor series for me picked up. You said you were liking it, and I was kind of on the fence. This definitely put it forward in my mind as something as a positive and something good to look forward to. But yeah, no. One of the things that I like that they tried to do, but I think they failed at this. And so we've been talking about. First thing I want to hop into, and I think this is the negative of the show. In its entirety, and which is sad because this is the Rings of Power, but I think the worst thing they've done is Celebrimbor. I think what they tried to do in this episode is really show us Sauron manipulating him.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't think they're doing a good job of it. Now, I think that they're doing a pretty good job showing him manipulating his knockoff Galadriel.
Yes, I agree.
Merdania, I think is her name, Merdania. I think that's kind of the manipulation that I would kind of like to see. He kind of allowed her purposefully to put on the ring, disappear, feel that power, see the evil, and then kind of misdirect that to Celebrimbor. I think that was good. I think that was a good moment and kind of a really display of his manipulation, but I don't feel like any of that has really been towards Celebrimbor. He was unable to manipulate him into building the rings with him until he just went on without him. And I think, that's one again, like we're just seeing the the character breaking of Celebrimbor and not being able to stand by his own strength or his resolve or his people and his values and his structure, and just give in time and time again to this lesser manipulator. And that's, I think, the weak point of this episode for me.
Well, and I completely agree with the Celebrimbor stuff because it feels so forced. Like you can tell what they're trying to do. Like they're spelling it out for us. They're putting it right in front of us. And it's just like, dude, this is it. You can like when you can tell that he is being so blatantly lied to, and obviously we should be able to tell that. We're the viewers, right? But sometimes you want to be like a little bit like, oh, he's making a good point. He's just Sauron is not. Anatar is not making good points. He's really just kind of thrown out the most basic deceitful things in the book, and he's just falling right for it. So I agree with that. One thing you touched on was the dwarves. Again, I do still enjoy the dwarves. It's one of the best storylines. And I really like that they're kind of starting to show where the greed of the dwarves comes from. Like, in all the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit touches on it especially. Oh, the dwarves, they're greedy. They're not good people to be around. And we're kind of starting to see that fall into place. So I do enjoy that aspect of it. I do enjoy, we finally did get a little hint of the Balrog, which is fun. And stuff like that is coming around. So the dwarf storyline has continued to be really good. And I think, honestly, if we don't get the Celebrimbor scenes, if we don't also get the High King of the Elves also just kind of being... I don't really like the scenes he's in this episode. He's in a couple of scenes, and he just seems so awkward, just staring off into the distance, people telling him stuff. He looks at the ring, has a flashback, or maybe he's seeing the future, or however you want to describe what he's seeing. It just seems kind of like, why are we wasting time with these scenes right now? So those were, I think, if we eliminate the elves from this episode, I think this could have been a very solid episode. And maybe that gets it a little bit lesser of, like, the length of the episode goes down. That's something I've been complaining about. I think if this was just a dwarves and, the Numenor episode, I think I would have been perfectly fine with that. And I think I would have really enjoyed it a lot more. But the things like you said, the Celebrimbor stuff's annoying, how he's just being so easily deceived. And he's not really even being deceived because he's like kind of not wanting to make more rings, but then he's like, you know what, I'll do it. Why not? So it is kind of annoying, and I think that's like, those were my biggest problems with this episode, was really just the elf scenes.
Yeah, and it was really just him and his pride that allowed him to make it. He didn't want to admit that maybe he made a fault with the dwarven rings, or maybe there was anything wrong. And Sauron was like, you have to admit, you have to tell him what you did. And he was like, nah, my pride can't do that, so I'm going to go ahead and make these rings. I thought that was like, okay, whatever. Like, your pride's your downfall, and like, tale is always time, pride goes before a fall. And that holds true in our own lives. But, I kind of would really like to see Sauron be the downfall of Celebrimbor, not his own personal stupidity. But, you touch on the dwarves, and I think the dwarves... part of this show was some of the best we've seen in the entire season, especially for the dwarves. I think seeing, Durin's will and his resistance. Now, Prince Durin, resistance to his father, resistance to the elves, resistance to being manipulated. It's brilliant, it's well written, and I love his steadfastness and even when he sees and is met with respect, he sticks to his guns. He's met with the ring working and his father having success, and him being restored back to his proper space. And even with that, he still goes against it. And I think that's really wonderful. I really love it that he's not being written off as someone who's just willing to be changed, because dwarves are very, very stubborn, as we've known, and they're greedy. But he's not greedy. He is willing to do what's right regardless, and he knows it's not right. He's siding with his wife. He's siding with the people that have the best for him. And he's listening, and I think it's really good. And when he sees his father change, he knows immediately there's something wrong. Dwarves don't change, and when he put on that ring, he changed. And I really thought that was cool. And I also love the way they use the ring. Like, you kind of always, personally, I've always kind of wondered what the rings did for the dwarves and for the elves and for the men before they were corrupted. And I think getting to see that he can see every jewel, he can see every run of gold, he can see where light should be entering the mountain. That's really cool, and I love the fact that they showed and demonstrated how the rings actually work and their benefit, and that they're not just something you put on and that maybe you're a little bit wiser, but they have real true power that are allowing him to excel in his own craft and give us a real purpose for why he's using it. And I thought that was really good.
Yeah, the door storyline, I think we've touched on it so much. It is such a good storyline. It's really fun. I think I don't remember if we said this or maybe you said it, maybe I said it. I would love if we had just gotten a show about these dwarves, I think it would have been a hit. Like it's been really fun to kind of see how they work, how they operate. And I know we got The Hobbit, and The Hobbit's obviously very heavily based on the dwarf stuff. But it's just been really fun and refreshing to see what they do and how they do stuff. I've really enjoyed that aspect of it. And no, it is cool seeing the rings at work, how they're benefiting the elves, how they benefit the dwarves, and it'll be fun to see what they come up with for the humans and the design they go with there. That part has been really fun and enjoyable to see.
Yeah. So, and then I did want to talk about the Numenor because I've kind of been hating on Numenor a little bit of that slow. Really could cut it out. Don't really care. But yeah, Elendil's moment and kind of getting to see his character, getting to see his talk with Queen Regent Muriel, and kind of his vision, what he saw when he touched the seeing eye, and that he is riding away from Numenor, kind of foreshadowing that he is going to go back and he's going to fight on Middle Earth with his son and kind of leave Numenor to the destruction to befall him. Really, we got to kind of see Kimin. Kimin, am I saying that right? Kimin,
I
Farazan's
believe
son.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, most hated character of the
Oh, I
show.
hate that guy.
Dude, hate that guy. He is weak. He is a pushover. He is corrupted by power. He is arrogant when there is none given. And I thought the scene where he was taking all of the sailors, the sea guards, arms and their weaponry away from them because they were loyal, and him kind of demanding respect from them. And then we get to see Elendil come up and all of the men respect him regardless of what the government says his title is. His character of himself goes above, beyond his position, goes beyond his rank, but his character as a man and what he has done and what he stood for all those years that he was captain, allowed it to excel past whatever the government says or whatever some little puny scrawny wimp of a loser standing up and saying, hey, those men were going to respect him. He was going to be their captain until the day that he dies. And I love that scene. I thought that was so wonderful. And strength is not not fighting is not weakness. If a lot of people say, you shouldn't be a fighter and you shouldn't be able to, take these things. But not being able to fight really just kind of makes you weak. Being able to fight and choosing not to really is the ultimate strength. And so him being able to just like take out Kim in there, but choosing not to because of his own morals and his own belief in the system that'll work, and he's just doing what's right. I think all of that was just beautiful, and I really enjoyed all of that, and I thought that was a great moment.
Yeah, and talking about the scene where they're taking up their robes and all that stuff, their garb. That's one of the best scenes the show has done so far.
Absolutely.
Hearing them all salute their captain, and him, like you said, still not really having authority anymore. But he tells them, hey, it's fine, and they're all like, okay, if that's what you say, we're gonna keep listening to you. And they continue that trend later on. I think is it Valendil?
Yeah, Valendil.
He's such a good character. I loved that scene. We talked about the arm break earlier. That was so cool. But it points to how hated of a character the son, Farazan's son, is. Like, we hate that guy. And I think he's actually doing a really good job. They've actually written him very well. We're supposed to hate him.
Oh yeah.
So I'm loving how they wrote that character. That's been really cool. But yeah, I think they're doing a perfect job of setting up Elendil to be the king. And I think
Yes.
it's right there. It's literally, we heard the queen say it like, hey, you saw something I couldn't see. That means Numenor's path has shifted, and I need you to continue on that journey. And it's going to be so satisfying to see it all play out. I'm loving it. It's got me so excited. If you know anything about Elendil's family tree, it's really, really exciting.
Yeah.
I'm super pumped for this. I'm super pumped for that.
I did want to touch on that arm break though. I'm sitting there and I'm watching it. I'm like, yes, like just go ahead and end this little prick. Like I wanted him to die so bad. And when he stopped and he dropped that sword, I knew at that moment, I was like, well, he's dead because he's going to stab him because there's no way that that little prick who is corrupted by this power is going to be humiliated and belittled in front of all those people and let that guy get away with it. I was like, kick it in the water, throw the sword in the water. Do not leave the sword on the ground. Why would you leave the sword on the ground? And then stabbed. And I was like, ugh, called it. But I don't think that's necessarily bad writing.
No, I don't think so either.
I think that's someone who in the moment would think that he got the best of his opponent, and that he wouldn't try something so cynical and stupid, without realizing what manner of man he was really dealing with. He was dealing with a child and a pathetic waste of Numenor rank.
Yep.
But yeah, I thought that was all great, and it was a well needed action for this episode. I do agree that this episode could have used some action. I do think it was it spent way too much time on Sauron and Celebrimbor. It really needed to show more Elrond. It really needed to show more Galadriel. It really had to have something because it was missing. I do love everything they did with Numenor and the dwarves, but I think it was a little bit of a miss on the other aspects.
Yeah, and I think this also was such a good scene for giving Elendil even more to fight for. I love that he's really got some, as if he hadn't already lost his son. Also, we hate his daughter too. She's one of the other characters we hate.
Well, that's Elendil's daughter.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. We hate his daughter too.
Yeah, for sure.
She's terrible. Hate her. But no, it gave a lot more of him, realizing his back is kind of up against the wall, and he knows what he's been tasked to do. He's really got some more motivation for it, as if losing his son wasn't enough. He basically just lost his second son. And I love that storyline. It's so fun. It's going to be so good. I think this is really, like I said, it's been one of my favorite parts of the show, and it's getting even better. And I'm loving the storyline they're going with. I love kind of like, it's not really a revenge story, because he's just doing what's noble and what's right. But ultimately, when you see it all pay off, it's going to be so satisfying.
Now, here, I got a question for you. So we get to see, you touched on his daughter. Do you think the killing of Elendil will allow her to return to Elendil's side? Or do you think that this is going to dive her deeper into what she already knows?
I don't know that she'll ever know the truth. I think this is going to be one of those things that gets kind of brushed under the rug. Oh, he attacked me, so I self-defended myself. And maybe Elendil will get an opportunity to tell her what really happened. But I don't know that it's necessarily going to push her back to this side. I think she already knows she's done some wrong, but I also think she wants power too. And we're kind of at a crossroads where a collision course essentially, where they're going to butt heads. Father and daughter are going to butt heads at some point. They kind of did a little bit this past episode, but I think we're heading for something even bigger. And maybe at that point, she'll find the true story. She'll realize what's really happening. I don't think that'll happen until she finds out that her brother's still alive. I think that's more so going to be what pushes her back the other way. But I honestly hope she doesn't just be like, oh, you know what? Since he killed him, I'm going to come help you now, Dad. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, I can definitely see her turning on him specifically because that was kind of her love. Yeah. It did seem like she was very emotionally and attached to him, and so I think that this could definitely have that effect on her. More not necessarily turning her to Elendil's, but really turning her against Kemen, and then ultimately Farazan because they're in cahoots together. So I think it has the potential.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's one of my, I've said it so many times this episode, it's one of my favorite storylines that we're getting. It's super fun. Again, I don't normally like the political agendas in shows, but like the political battle that's being done in Numenor is really, really fun. And they did hint a little bit of that with Sauron, where he says, oh, have you been to Numenor? It's beautiful, but there's so many cracks. And I love that it's kind of a known thing of how powerful of a country they can be if they have the right leader there. And that's kind of what this is right now. It's kind of that battle of good and evil inside of a country, and I'm really enjoying that part of it.
Yeah, and you kind of get to see the foreshadowing of power hungry men trying to reach
Yep.
the elves. You get to see Farazan talking about how the gates of eternity are kind of like in his sight, but out of reach. And
Yep.
I thought that was kind of a very interesting line to put it in that he will be one of the ones wearing the rings, corrupt nine. So that's I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, man, fun episode. We definitely didn't go as long on the Rings of Power, but you know what? We only had an hour to cover instead of 4 hours, so I think it's
Yeah.
a worthy. I'm actually thankful that we got to only cover this one episode. I feel like it's a little bit easier to cover 1 hour instead of so much, because you did say like these episodes are long, and I do enjoy them, but I also love concise storytelling. So it's not necessarily a benefit when there is about 20 minutes of the episode that I'm not enjoying. And
Mhm.
that was kind of the Celebrimbor stuff. So I think this episode would have been perfectly long enough if it was just the dwarves and Numenor.
Yeah.
But anyway, but yeah, I think that does it for our weekly fix, unless you have added something to the schedule.
No, I don't think so. I think we touched on a lot of fun stuff. We're getting to that point in the year where I think we're about to ramp up a little bit more with some exciting stuff. We're going to have Agatha to talk about next week. Obviously, we're still going to have Rings of Power to talk about. So we're finally starting to get some more stuff where we're not just talking about as much news, which we both love the news part, but it's also fun to actually have some stuff that we can really break down and theorize over. So no, I think we did a great job this episode of getting through some of that basic stuff, and we have some really big episodes coming up.
Yeah, I'm very excited for what the future holds. We have 3 episodes left. So I don't know. I think we're going to see a little bit of political try to get Galadriel to turn to Adar's side and see what that kind of beholds. But we also have a pretty important date for the weekly fix coming up, as we are fastly approaching our first year of doing this is fastly approaching, which I think is crazy. It does not seem like we've been doing this for a year, but man, has it been fun! And I think next week will mark our 1 year of doing the podcast.
Yeah, it really doesn't feel like it's been that long, but if you think back, think about how much has happened since we first started this podcast. I mean, it's been a real roller coaster. So
When
it's
how much
been
content we covered.
yeah, man, it's been crazy. There's been so much come out. There's been so much stuff that we've talked about that's already been out. It's been such a good time, and it's always a highlight of the week to be able to sit down and nerd out a little bit for a while. It's also a little bit annoying though, not gonna lie, because I can't tell you how many times after I watch something I want to just immediately start talking about it. But I'm like, no, gotta wait till the podcast. Gives us something to talk about. But overall, it's been really fun. So I'm excited to continue. Here's hopefully to another year of great content, and hopefully you guys continue to enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to issue this challenge. I do like to have some listener engagement opportunities, but if you think of maybe send in like message us or text us what your favorite episode of the podcast has been, what you maybe are enjoying the most out of this podcast, what aspects of it you're enjoying over the past year, what you found has been the podcast that you tune into the most or you recommend to your friends the most. And we would love to hear your thoughts and what this podcast has kind of been to you. So if you would do that, hit up our Discord, hit up our X, our Instagram, our email, our phones are available if you have our numbers. Those listeners.
Yeah, that's a very private group of people.
Private group of people. We're not posting that in the description. But
Not yet,
I
anyway.
do not. Well, no, I will not be posting that in the description. But anyway, guys, we thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We always have such a blast doing it, and we hope you enjoyed listening. And with that, we will catch you in the next one next week with Agatha All Along and the Rings of Power breakdown. So we're excited for that one.